Now that we're back from your amazing lunch break, I know that you don't want the afternoon sluggish. I want you to stand up. I want you to get some big breaths in. Just get some jumps going. Get that body moving. We want to bring some energy into this afternoon because we've got a lot of really good information to bring you, but more importantly, I want to talk about our update and how much we've raised. We're at 5,360, close to being double. So I'm going to challenge us now to double this in the next 3 segments. If we can get to 10 grand, that's going to be amazing. Remember, our goal's 30. I set it for 60, so help us help you, help us make this ChiroThon the best ever.
That's what I love about it, is it's teamwork. There's no I in team. Teamwork makes the dream work, and you're with us. And speaking of teamwork, this vignette is sponsored by Chiro Health USA. Chiro Health USA is a provider-owned network working in conjunction with a discount medical plan organization. They provide a very simple solution when it comes to offering legal network-based discounts for cash, underinsured, and out-of-network patients. They're helping patients with the cost of care, and that is the right thing to do. Doing it the wrong way can cost, and that can cost affordability for the patient, while also creating problems with compliance in federal healthcare laws, so they can focus on patient care when they have Chiro Health USA. They are growing their network. There's over 4,000 healthcare professionals who've already helped out over 580,000 families get the care they need and the cost they can afford.
Finding affordable chiropractic care shouldn't be complicated. Chiro Health USA helps you and your family save on chiropractic services at more than 7,700 providers nationwide. For just $49 a year, your membership gives you access to discounted rates right away, even if you're uninsured, underinsured, or your plan doesn't cover chiropractic care. Chiro Health USA isn't insurance. It's designed to help make care more affordable for families. Find a participating chiropractor near you today at chirohealthusa.com.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the nervous system. We've gone over concussion. Now we're going to go into the internal part of the body. One thing that you might be missing at home. I got Dr. Tobi Jeurink here. Got it. I'm learning. I'm getting it better. She's got a bachelor's degree. She's got her DC, but she's also got a diplomate in this internist side of chiropractic. She's an educator. She's a lecturer. More than 20 years experience in clinical practice in nutrition and wellness. Dr. M was just telling me a story how he refers to her, and we'll bring that up later. But she owns Root Function Health, where she helps patients address the root cause and the concern through chiropractic care, nutrition, and one of the biggest things, I think, lifestyle. So we're going to get into that. She's taught at Cleveland Chiropractic College since 2005. She lectures in dermatology, intro to DACBCI for their postgraduate program. She's a diplomate in the American Board of Chiropractic Internists. She's a respected leader in the state and national chiropractic organization. Her work has literally earned multiple honors, including KCA Young Doctor of the Year, KCA Doctor of the Year, and CDID. What
Dr. Strel-Kissinger.
Yeah, Strel-Kissinger, which I want to ask you about that. She grew up with autoimmune issues, which a lot of you guys do. And this is one thing that I think, me personally, I'm like a white belt compared to you. So I'm excited about this. But this is the between chiropractic and what she's learning now has been able to help her build a program for life-changing benefits in nutrition. Thanks to both her, she's able to continue doing activities and travels and everything she loves. Let's get into this because I think it's really important when we look at chiropractic. A lot of times I think it's just the bone. It's just adjusting. It's just pain.
Right.
And it's so much more than that. And there's so many specialties within chiropractic, and the public doesn't realize that. And for me, I always love to refer to a chiropractor who's specialized because at least they understand our philosophy. When it comes to you specifically, like, how have you taken what you're learning into the mission of where you're going?
Gosh, that's a big question. You know, with the DAPSI program, we learned so much about how to, the core of chiropractic, but then you take that into the truly looking at the internal side. And then going back to the root cause, like figuring out what really led that person to that so you can help them figure out their journey of how they're going to go forward. So, what we try to do is take that history and take that, what's going on and figure out their motivation to help them figure out what they really want to do. And so kind of my career's kind of been the same way. Figuring out some of my own problems helped me to figure out how to help other people with that too as well. So.
And say like somebody out there is watching and they're like, wow, this is the first time I've ever heard about a diplomate in this, right? What does that look like? Take them through a first visit. Like if I was coming in right now and I'm like, I've been to this chiropractor, I've been to this PT, I've been to this acu, I've gone to this functional medicine person, and they show up in your clinic. Take them through a first kind of visit approach on how you look at them.
Yeah. So first of all, our visit's going to be at least an hour. And that 90% of that's probably going to be history taking. So we're going to start with history, like in childhood. I would actually go back to birth, sometimes even mom's history, because we look at the way that those first round of antibiotics, or if we look at the way that some things have changed along the way, and we look at childhood traumas, we look at those types of things. So we're not going to start with what happened last week. We're going to start at the very beginning. And so the patient ends up telling you a story and so, first of all, it's a story that never got to tell anyone else before, because they've always gone in and, hey, here's my complaint, and go right to that little spot versus being able to say, hey, this is how I got here. Because most of us have had something that's happened it wasn't what happened last week. It's what happened your whole life that led to this illness or to this sickness. Because we deal a lot with chronic pain, we deal a lot with autoimmunity, we deal a lot with those types of things. So it's like people just don't have that one little thing that happened. And if you have a sports injury, it's great. You go get the sports injury taken care of. But for most people, if they've been sick for a long time or they've had things come up, there's been a lot of things that led up to that.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the difference. Is we're going to look. We're going to take it all the way back, and then choose appropriately selected tests. So versus doing like everyone gets the same care, it's not. Not everyone gets the same test. Not everyone gets the same care. So basically, the care is going to depend on the test. Going to depend on what their history tells us, and the care is going to depend on what that tells us then too as well. So it's a very customized way of doing things and getting to that individual versus kind of a general. We don't have any protocols, right? We have certain things, ideas that we think about, but we don't have a set protocol list that we're going to run. So you're not going to get the same test as someone else is going to get usually. So
this is so important. This morning we talked about the linebacker, Casey. Kansas City Chiefs, and he was talking, Shields was talking about being curious and also being willing to go forward with your curiosity. Here's Dr. Jeurink. What I think is so special is when you're in the internist area is the curiosity is exactly what we need to bring forward from the patient, because yes, there's symptoms, but this is not about symptoms. This is about root causes. And I know a lot of people, when I used to ask them, okay, let's talk about when you were 5 years old, do you remember some of the traumas? And the looks on their faces was like, I don't know where you're going with this. Why don't I even care about this? But I do love that we take the time to give them personalized care, and that this is not like a prescription. Everybody gets the same one. Next, tell us about what that means for you when you're talking to a patient, because I know you've gotten that question before, which is, I don't know where you're going. Why are you asking me all these questions? Because there's someone who's suffering right now, and you've been suffering for a while, but you don't even know what it is to ask for. So she's kind of the doctor that is doing the curiosity and jumping in to ask questions.
Bring curiosity back, and I like that.
Yeah. No, and it is, and that's why we've been taught through the program, and then also it goes back to chiropractic. We always kind of went back to what led into this situation, right? Versus just so many people focus on just the diagnosis, but it's about the whole human and what they're willing to do. Because we teach a program called motivational interviewing. If someone's not willing to make a change, you can't want for them more than they want for themselves. So but you have to figure out, sometimes asking the right questions gets them, so you can figure out what they want, maybe before they know what they want, right? Because some people come in, I want to lose weight, or I want to do this. And then you'll find out, no, what they really want to do is they want to feel better to hold their grandkid, or they want to be able to run a 5K because, they in honor of someone. And they don't even realize they want that until you ask those questions. So I think sometimes that's where, like you said, that curiosity of where to go to with that.
Actually, you think about that, Dr. Drake, you think about the women that really do, for example, want to, like what you said, I want to lose weight. But then you ask yourself, so you lose the weight, well, what actually is behind the core reason why you want to lose weight? Is it to fit your clothes? Is it to be able to function with an activity of daily living that just levels up? And I think that's where even the athletes are like, they want something, but sometimes they don't know the motivation behind knowing why they want it.
I think it's too, like, being able to relate, right?
Yeah.
And one, you've been through this. You've been through that autoimmune side.
Yep.
You know, and for me, it's like I can relate to that athlete because I know the destruction of not having that when I'm injured, right? Or if I had something major happen. You know, gratefully, I haven't had an autoimmune issue,
Right.
and I hope I never do. But it's amazing because we find our path as a healer sometimes in our own story, right? Like I always say, you don't become a healer because you just chose to, because you're like, I want to make money. Like most people are called into our profession because their life was changed through chiropractic. And you know, when I look at athletes, 'cause I think it's a big concept, and we're talking autoimmune right now and a disease or disease in the sickness model, but you also work with athletes on the performance side with the same type of information. I think it's so important that we talk about the internal biochemistry of the performing athlete. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we work with athletes and we work with a couple other doctors. We refer quite a bit in the area, and then we also have a functional medicine clinic out of another doctor's office in Junction City. But we work with, a lot of people think when they think of athlete nutrition, they think of macros, or they think of, you know, like we work with cyclists, so we're like, how many calories you're gonna get in, how many goos you're gonna have to get in an hour. We work with triathletes, and so everyone always thinks about the calorie intake, and they don't think about the inflammatory side, and they don't think about like what we put in, how it's gonna help us heal if we do get an injury, or prevent us from getting an injury. So if we can kind of talk about the way that the body actually functions from that inflammation, because as an athlete, you're going to create inflammation. There's no doubt about it. That's part of the way it works. So if we can do what we need to do to have that anti-inflammatory effect between diet, food sensitivities, looking at omega-3 levels, all those types of things. But again, that's just not something they get with the trainers, which are great. They get those macros and they get that thought process. But we're really looking at what their individual biochemistry, you know, may need. We look at genetics where sometimes maybe someone is, you know, most people are likely to be CoQ10 deficient before they're 40, but some people that have a genetic trait might be deficient in their 20s, right? So they may suffer from a lot of fatigue with training, or they may suffer from a lot of, you know, other things along that line, or they might have an inability to convert omega-3s from plants, and all of a sudden now they're trying to do a plant-based diet, but they can't get any anti-inflammatory effects from omega-3s. They have to go to a fish base. So it's like we can look with those things and individualize that to their care so that they can be a better athlete, less injuries, and recover faster. So that's kind of the goal that we work with.
When you think of autoimmune diseases, oftentimes, and maybe for those that are out there, they don't recognize the power they can have over someone's life. And we have a board member that I absolutely adore, and she shared some of just being 12 years old and being so internally embarrassed because she had SLE and her skin was always rashed and really cracked, and she was very sad, and she met a chiropractor. I mean, she was lathering her lotion on and doing all the things. And when she told me the story, even in her age of 50, she's telling me when she was, you know, in her 12 years old, you could see the tears coming to her eyes because you know the impact it had on her. And she said, if I hadn't met the chiropractor, my life would have been dismal. And I just got chills thinking about it, because it is really hard to get through an autoimmune disease if someone doesn't A, diagnose it properly, and B, treat it properly, particularly when you're a child, because you don't understand what's happening. And then there's the ultimate emotional factor that goes with it. Would you share a little bit about some of the autoimmune diseases that you have seen and some of the miracles that have come your way as well?
Yeah, so as you know, most autoimmune diseases in women, and again, it's more prevalent. It is most, so it's more prevalent. So we see anything from lupus to MS to rheumatoid arthritis. And so unfortunately, a lot of times in the medical side, they get a diagnosis and they get a medication, and it kind of maybe halts some of the progression, but they don't actually feel a change for most people, right? So we work a lot with kids, and people don't always think of it like eczema and those types of things as being autoimmune, but really they are. It's from the gut and coming from within. So again,
say that again, please, because I want everybody to hear that, because this is a very key point.
Yeah. Well, honestly, eczema, we just talked about eczema, and eczema is definitely from the gut. So we look at this, we look at things like the antibiotic exposure even in utero, right? Even before, you know, birth. But then you go the birth process, and you go through the tonsillectomies and all that stuff, the antibiotics. But eczema's definitely a gut association, but almost all autoimmunity you can trace back to a portion of it being in the gut. When we create inflammation, our immune system actually mostly in our gut. And so when we have that immune system attack, our body's trying to attack something else, right? So it's trying to attack that food allergy, or it's trying to attack that mold, or it's trying to attack that bacteria that we've got in our gut, or the candida. And so it starts to attack its own tissues. And so a lot of people don't realize that that's where it's really started. So you're looking at the skin, they put on all these topicals,
Yes.
right? And all these topicals, but they didn't go back and they didn't fix the gut. I remember my worst case of eczema when I was probably, I think, 6 or 7 years in practice, and I was just finishing up the DAPC program. And so, we came in, this poor kid, he was about 7 years old when he came in. He'd missed, several months of school, every year of school, several months, because when he came in, he was just wrapped in gauze, right? And so he's, broken out, wrapped in gauze. And they've been to the dermatologist, many dermatologists. He's had this since he was 7 months old, right? So we started going through, and never once did he have a stomach ache, so no one ever thought to look at his gut. But we pulled up the food sensitivity chart, we did a food sensitivity test, and then we also did a stool sample test. This kid was just loaded with food sensitivities, and he was loaded with abnormal microbes in his gut. Mm-hmm. And so basically, we went through and we healed up that gut and went through that process. And anytime I see his mom in town till today, she gets tears in her eyes, because they went through 7 years of him just being wrapped in gauze and going through this and that and everything else, and nothing came of it, right?
And I think the key thing you said that I want people to hear, it probably started in the pregnancy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's why I love that you're going to the parents.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who are out there, that I take care of a lot of kids too, but I always say, especially if it's young, it probably happened in utero. And then transferred, right?
Yeah.
And so and it's not the parents' fault, because sometimes they feel guilty, and I want you guys to realize it's not, because you don't know.
No.
And what's cool though is, like, when you're healing a kid, you get to heal the parent as well.
Yeah.
And they get to learn, oh man, I didn't realize I had this, difference in my body, and then all of a sudden their frequency changes, the kid's frequency, and they heal together.
Yeah. One of the first things I ask moms is if their child had, seborrheic dermatitis or, cradle cap, and they're like, yes, how'd you know? I'm like, well, because you're here with an autoimmunity, I know that your microbiome was altered. Mm. The kid's microbiome's altered at birth, right, or before that in utero. So but we start going back to that, and like a lot of times I'll ask the question like, did you have any food sensitivities as a kid? And they'll go back, well, mom said I had to be on a special formula, and here we are in your 40s, and now all of a sudden we're diagnosed in a dairy allergy. And it's like, basically, yes, you had your immune system try to do what it's supposed to very early on, and you kept overriding it by putting that dairy back in, and so now all of a sudden it's attacking those joints. It's rheumatoid arthritis, or it's lupus, or it's whatever else, MS. It's all these types of things. So we start looking back at, there's a lot of things that if we saw that in the history, but yeah, parents don't know, because they went to the doctor, they got the eczema cream, or they went to the doctor and they got the, here's the NSAIDs or whatever it is. And it's not a blame game. It really is, it's a knowledge basis. But you said you can see the tears in their eyes, like, oh gosh, what did I do? And it's what you didn't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Can I throw a curveball at you?
Oh boy.
Okay, here we go.
All right. Breastfeeding. How important?
Hugely, yeah, absolutely. Now, but it's also important for mom to have the right diet.
100%.
Yeah, and it's also important for them to have the microbiome. And then, what we don't take into account is dad's history too. So breastfeeding is super important, but a lot of times when we're asking, like, we've got a child with colic, or we've got a child with eczema, we can't stop at mom. We got to look at dad's history too as well, because there's a genetic play in that.
100%.
And so breastfeeding, but yeah, mom has to eat the right foods too.
Yeah.
And so we see a lot of patients where, we take the dairy, or we take the peanuts, or we take whatever it is out of mom's diet, because again, we see more eczema in kids on bottles, but we still see eczema in kids, with mom breastfeeding, but it goes back to her diet. But then a lot of times we have to still look at dads too. Yeah. If dad has a history of milk allergy or whatever it is, we have to take that into consideration, because you can't test a kid for food sensitivities before the age of 2, and even up to the age of 5 is not always accurate. So we're looking at mom and dad's history to decide what we're going to do with that.
And I think that's really important, right? Like, a lot of times we go straight to the mom.
Yeah.
And I'll just be vulnerable, but like, my wife and I are trying right now, and she's like, Sean, get your crap together. Yeah. Like, you're involved too, right? Like, she's doing all these things, and I'm guilty. Like, we're not perfect as chiropractors, but it is one of the things that I talk to my men about and my players. Yeah. I'm like, listen, guys, like, you're involved too. Like, the more clean your system is and the more clean her system is, the better opportunity we're going to have for these kids to grow healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a lot of research nowadays talking about men's health actually has to do with placental health.
Yeah.
And so when we look at that, and then you look at like genetic variants like MTHFR, and some of the things are all the buzzwords, but there's a lot of other genetics that play in. But a lot of times how healthy you are helps how your body transmits those different types of genes.
And I was a C-section, so I was screwed from birth.
Right,
Right.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you know,
right.
and so at the end of the day, like, I think that's something we're not talking about. Like
Yeah.
these elective C-sections that are affecting the microbiome, that are affecting, you know, how we grow up, how we heal.
Yeah.
And this is something that chiropractors talk about that unfortunately other practitioners don't want to talk about
Right.
with these selective C-sections for just cosmetic purposes.
Right, yep.
When in reality, like, the vaginal canal is super important to
absolutely,
the birth
yeah.
and the health of the inner body.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so vaginal delivery, but again, mom's microbiome has to be healthy
Yeah,
too.
you're right.
Because we see so many people that have had a history of the recurrent antibiotics, the recurrent yeast infections, the recurrent things like that. So now we're also delivering that altered microbiome. So ideally, we like to test parents before they ever, you know, get that great result of being pregnant, because there's so much health that has to happen before that, right, and early on. And so a lot of that's a microbiome. We might do a vaginal microbiome test. We'll probably do a stool sample, looking at those types of things. That's really important going through that. Because again, we do kind of just emphasize, oh, well, take your multivitamin, take your
Yeah.
prenatal, and
Here's
you
a
know,
probiotic.
Yeah, yeah.
It is kind of, so we've gone through the realm of someone who's suffering with an autoimmune disease. We went through the child that's coming into life in the mother, how important that is, but we brought it back to also the father. And I think advocacy for ourselves is one of the critical components. Is if something is to be, you have to take control of it. And that's one of the pieces where I think coming into an office that really recognizes that we want to go back in history to be able to level up in the ability for you to be optimized.
Right.
And you've seen the gamut from the mother pregnant to the baby coming in and all the way through. I'm going to ask you if you would kindly kind of share with what are some of the surprises, so our audience could kind of glean into it. What are some of the surprises that you've seen when you start educating them?
Oh my goodness, wow, that's a curveball. Gosh, it's hard to think off the top. It's just, I think some of the people taking it, all of a sudden realizing that they have what I call and what I teach is an intrinsic locus of control. That basically, instead of the medical world, so extrinsic. So here's your medicine, here's your prescription, here's 5 exercises, whatever it is. But I think when people actually start to realize that they actually have a say in their own healthcare, and they actually have a say in how they respond to care, right? So a lot of people don't realize that it's not just about, even from a natural world, that supplement you give, but how you receive that and how you take that and the nutrition that you're going, that they actually have a control of that. So probably the biggest things I see when people really do change their diet, because again, we give supplements, we do that stuff, right? But I tell people first, I'm going to change your diet first, because, and you have to be, and a lot of people ask me, like, you know what, I can coach you, I can tell you all day long, but are you ready to make a change? And so that's where, but when they are, and you can see that, and probably another thing that kind of comes up, and I know I'm rambling a little bit, but probably another thing that comes up is like when people, they're not ready at the moment, but we might see them again 3 years later.
Yeah.
And now they're ready, right? Maybe they had too much going on at the time, they couldn't quite work it all, figure it out all together, but now they're ready and now they get it. And so that's kind of the fun part about it is, I can't, it's hard for me off the top to say of specific cases, but when they get that gleam in their eye and all of a sudden they get it. And that's what I love about teaching too. I can watch it with students. Like they'll be kind of sitting there and looking at their laptop, whatever, and all of a sudden I'll say something like, and they get it. And that's when you're like, okay, now you've reached them. Now you've got something in there. You got that light in their eyes. And patients are like that too. That if they finally, when they get it and they realize that they can do something about it, then it's fun. It's really fun to see those changes. So,
we often talk about how important the brain is, but very few recognize the importance of the second brain. And people, when I say it to them, do you know you need to take care of your primary brain and your secondary brain? They're like, I didn't know I had a secondary brain. I go, yeah, it's called your gut. Your gut has more neurons than your spinal cord. And that's so important. Like 90 billion in your brain, okay, great, you can lose a few here and there. But when you get down to 100 million in your gut, now we're talking really important information, because your gut really makes a decision for how you're going to feel today, tomorrow, and in the future. And so it's not just about what you're putting in it, it's also how you believe in what's going on in your body. Talk about the emotional stress.
Yeah, well, that gut-brain axis is bidirectional, right? So when we start talking about that, just like when we get a nervous stomach, you get up here, you get a little twitchy stomach, that's actually a biochemical reaction that's occurring. Your vagus nerve is transmitting butyrate and transmitting all sorts of neurochemicals in through there. And so it is absolutely important. And you would look at other cultures, European cultures, they sit down and they have a meal. And they, luckily we got to do that today. We got to take some time and converse with our friends and our chiropractic family. And that makes that meal so much more nutrition than if we grab a, even a health bar and chew it down and walk it down out the street,
Right.
And so, it's basically how we think about that and how we think about our food, and if we, are thankful for our food and things like that, that makes a big difference in how we, how our body actually absorbs that and things along that line. And, if we get the chemicals of our food, that would also help a little bit too.
Well, I think the thing too is that, you've got the heart brain, and then you've got the fascial brain that they've just now announced, right? So that's where the physical side of chiropractic matched in with this side matched so well.
Yeah.
So one of the stories that I heard is that you and Dr. M have referred a client recently together, and that you've opened a satellite clinic.
Yep.
Can you talk about both of those?
Yeah, so
And how that works?
Yeah, so first of all, Dr. M is the one that treated me after I had an accident. And so I probably wouldn't be here doing what I do had it not been for chiropractic to begin with, but then especially after I got hit on a bicycle, he basically brought my brain back to life, right? So it's one of those things that, so I recognize how important his work is. And so recently he referred me another patient, so that he's not proficient in mold, and he doesn't, like he said, doesn't want to be. I don't want to be proficient in some of the things that he does so well, so I refer him patients. So so she's really excited about being able to work with both of us and really have a specialty in this part of it, with the mold detox and working with, and even in that conversation, we found some other things that were going on, because very rarely is there one little thing that's going on, right?
Yeah.
Right? Is this mold? Get out of the mold, you're good. Right? No, there's a lot. There's been other stuff going on. There's some psychosocial stuff, there's some food stuff, and everything else from that standpoint. So we do refer patients back and forth from that standpoint. I've got a lot of sports chiropractors in Kansas City to refer to, but I have a doc in Junction City that's always referred me patients. And he's like, hey, you know what? They drive 2.5 hours to see you. Why don't you come see them? So now we've set up a satellite clinic once a month where I go out there and I see patients out there, because he works with some pro and some college athletes, and he works with the general population. So it's been a really great. We've been doing it about 6 months, and it's just a lot of fun to be able to really see people excel in both the chiropractic side and then also the nutrition side. And as you know, it's like one of those things, when you refer someone, they already trust you, right? Or when you get referred, so when I say go see Dr. Bladnoff, there's already an inherent trust. Yeah. Where if you're walking out trying to promote yourself, you're a salesperson, versus if someone already has trust in you, another trusted professional, it just makes it work so much better. And I always told them that Dr. Mitch's patients are always the ones that we're like so glad to see in our office and now in his office, because they're already ready, right? So they already know that they're here for a reason, they're ready to do the work. Where sometimes if you're trying to convince a patient to come in, they're not necessarily ready to do the work.
That's it. It comes down to teamwork.
Yeah.
And through the whole ChiroThon so far, is we've looked at teamwork as a building block, and that there's no I in team. So we're all taking that athlete or that patient, and we're trying to lift them up, bring them to a place where they can find their own harmony, so they can succeed. And that then becomes, I want to go home and tell my friends and my family that I just got this wonderful doctor in my life, and this wonderful nutritionist, and this, it goes on and on.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want a lovely massage therapist?
Yeah.
Heart out to our massage therapists, because they do fabulous work, and they bring us
Yeah.
all together to a place where we can really have those moments.
So I want to leave you with the last word on this one. So if you had the audience out there this right now, if you had to give them like 3 bullet points on where to start within themselves from this conversation, what would you advise them to do?
So first of all, kind of take an inventory, right? So a lot of times we don't stop, and actually we're busy, we lie, but take an inventory. Maybe that's partly doing a food diary. Maybe that's partly looking at your stress management, as far as, we have external stressors and we have internal stressors. So I think sometimes we really need to stop and see how much stress is actually there versus how much stress we're perceiving.
Yeah.
Because so much of that, and then take an inventory of their diet. And then, but basically then also take an inventory of who you have in your healing network, right? From your professionals, but also your family and who you're going to be around. I get the best results from patients when the whole family decides to make a change, right? So versus if mom's going home and telling the kids we're going to do this, this, and this, and no one's on board, right? Or I get the best ones when mom goes home and the husband says, I'm going to go and cook for you. I know they're on board. So take an inventory of where you're at, take an inventory of what help you have, and then you've got to take some time to say, you know what, I'm ready to make that commitment. And people don't think that one of the things is that people think they have to do all or nothing. Like the plan is just like, I can't do it, so I'm not going to do it at all. No, I mean, sometimes it's baby steps. Like I said, sometimes we work with someone for 6 months and then they're gone and they're back 6 months later because now they're ready to take the next step. And so again, it's not an all or nothing. But you've got to kind of work those steps a little bit. And so I'd say, people that think they can't make a change because it's just too big, start with the little things, right? And it doesn't have to be all at once.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you got homework, everyone. She just gave you homework. She's an instructor. What did you expect? Okay.
Right.
I want to thank you all. Thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
thank you.
Jeurink, for Jeurink.
Jeurink.
See, you did it to me, Dr. Jeurink.
Yeah.
This is one of those moments where we really want to thank our guest, because for her to come here and she's doing this willingly and out of the grace of her heart, because she's seen the changes that have happened in the people that she's treated, to be able to share it with you today on a Saturday and give you the homework that you need to take the inventory and then to commit to it. It's one thing to start, it's another thing to say, okay, baby steps. Sometimes we just need a little bit of prodding. Finding a doctor like you that will be able to hold your hand and say, I want to do it, but I'm doing the best I can. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And every dollar counts. Remember that this is about those dollars that are going to help patients find a doctor of chiropractic, showcase the benefits of chiropractic care. But don't worry, we're going to be right back. We're going to have a short break, and then we will bring you back into a world of excitement and more education.
Finding affordable chiropractic care shouldn't be complicated. Chiro Health USA helps you and your family save on chiropractic services at more than 7,700 providers nationwide. For just $49 a year, your membership gives you access to discounted rates right away, even if you're uninsured, underinsured, or your plan doesn't cover chiropractic care. Chiro Health USA isn't insurance. It's designed to help make care more affordable for families. Find a participating chiropractor near you today at chirohealthusa.com.